Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we'll be breaking this thing down verse by verse once again into factual, logical statements in English so that we can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of his book, and more importantly for us as non-believers, how does this affect us in our lives today? So as I always do before I start, I'm going to tell you now, if you have any doubts as to my factual accuracy or the things I'm about to say, please first buy, translate and read an Arabic Quran, not an English one because they're not the same, an Arabic one. And after having done so, you'll recognise that every single word I'm about to tell you now or have previously said is 100% true of the words of Allah Akbar and what Muslims believe today. So let's continue. If you watched the last episode, you will remember that Allah was reeling off a bunch of excuses for why his previous prophecies that his Muslims would be wealthy and successful are not happening. It's all their own fault because they're not worshipping enough, they're not doing his obedience and they're not worshipping him. So he has seen it fit to improve the lives and the wealth of his enemies, but only temporarily, so that they can be led into more sin and he can crush them at the day of resurrection and all his Muslims can flood paradise and have their virgins. So, with that in mind, let's carry on where we left off. 183. Here, some did say, quote, "Surely Allah sent us by our covenant with him a sacrifice to be burnt in flame," end quote. Say to them, quote, "A messenger came before with this sacrifice. Why, if you were truthful, did you poison him?" End quote, end of verse. So, this is like the fourth time in about as many episodes where Allah has mentioned the fact that Mohammed was poisoned by a Jewish slave woman and died a horrible death in pain and then was ended like a dog with no respect or honour whatsoever. So he's very upset about this, and I think that has transposed onto his Muslim believers, who are also very upset when you mention this to them. Also, the fact that we only know this happened because it's written in their holy texts. So they can't deny it. Allah and everyone else in the Muslim faith knows Mohammed died in pain like a dog being poisoned by a Jewish slave woman. Some mighty warfare was going on there, and was then ended by the most meek and humble creature, one of his own slaves who was a woman. So I feel like that, if we break it down, is why he's getting a mention here. And he's saying here to his Muslims, when they're whinging about having no money, and Allah's saying, don't worry about those rich guys over there, just go and kill them, you can have all their money, then you can inherit it for me. Even though I told you it was already mine and I was going to give it to you, it's now my inheritance and you have to go and get it for me. But don't worry about that, hate them. They insulted our religion, they insulted our prophet. Not only that, we have a promise, you and I, O Muslim, says Allah in the book, and that promise is this. I sent you a burnt sacrifice through Mohammed, which definitely 100% happened, trust me bro. And to anyone who might not believe this or question or doubt it, like those evil Jews and Christians, what you say to them is this. Mohammed did actually come with that sacrifice. It definitely did happen. Why, if you were truthful, did you have him poisoned, O evil Jews? That's what this means. 184. Indeed you did deny it, and also you did deny our prophet who was mighty and proved himself truthful and did bring our illuminating book from Allah himself. End of verse. That's interesting, isn't it? So he's saying, indeed. He's carrying on with the last thing about how they killed Mohammed with poison. Indeed, you did deny it, you Jews. Even though one person was the one that killed Mohammed, you Jews are all denying it was you. Allah, mate, come over here. Allah, I know you're busy, but just give me a few minutes, all right, mate? Yeah, come over here. Allah, I'm not sure you're aware. I know you're all-powerful and wise. If one person does a crime, poisoning Mohammed, the other Jews are going to deny that it was them. Because it wasn't them. It was the woman who poisoned Mohammed that poisoned Mohammed. And you don't share crimes amongst the people of an individual because that would be highly racist. Isn't that right, Allah? Oh, we're going to have some words about that if you don't think that's how racism works. Anyway, I must carry on. So Allah doesn't believe me or agree with the known thoughts of the modern world that actually an individual is responsible for their own crimes. Instead, he thinks that one person in a population can commit a crime, and then everybody for the rest of time who is related to that one person and in their tribe is then responsible for that crime. And that is why, if we break it down, indeed you did deny. He's saying the Jews deny that they should be genocided because Allah said in his book that once upon a time a single Jew slave woman killed Mohammed. That's what this means. And not only that, it's a description of the Prophet Mohammed, who was mighty. Even though he got poisoned to death by a humble slave woman, he was mighty and proved himself truthful by dictating this book from Allah, despite the fact that he couldn't read or write. And he did bring the illuminating book down from Allah himself. So what is being said here by Allah through Mohammed? Not only did Mohammed bring this down, thus proving that he's the true prophet, better than Jesus, this is the illuminating book. Now, who amongst you knows what illumination is in terms of Freemasonry? Illumination is what the Freemasons say is the goal of the whole endeavour of worshipping satanic ritual and doing the whole Freemasonry bit. The Illuminati is what they became known as in the modern day because of this endeavour to be illuminated. So isn't it interesting? Indeed you did deny that you killed this person. Now we got to genocide you all, O Jews. That guy was mighty and proved himself trustworthy despite you were saying you didn't believe him as a prophet. And the reason we know it is because he gave us the method to illumination, which is this book here. The Quran of the Muslims, the illuminating text from Allah himself. And Allah says so in his book, so it must be true. Trust me, bro. Mohammed saw it too, even though he's dead and we can't ask him because he got poisoned. That's what this means. 185. He foretold every soul will taste death. Surely all your reward will reach you after this on the resurrection day. So whoever is removed from the ever fire and enters the garden is indeed triumphant. And what could be higher than personal pride? End of verse. Oh, this is a good one, isn't it? A lot of juicy content to be picked. So he starts off by saying, Allah foretold through Mohammed in this book, every soul will taste death. So when Jesus Christ said only the sinners will taste death, if you're righteous and godly, he will collect you before you taste death, so your body will taste the death, but you will already be in heaven by this point, looking in a near-death experience upon your body. And I can attest that this will happen to you when you are near death, because I've done it twice. You do indeed rise out of your body and see it, and you can hear the holy voice of the Lord within your ears. Fortunately, thank God, I didn't die on either occasion, and I went back into my body and recovered. But I can say from both those experiences, because I wasn't on any drugs, I wasn't knocked on the head and hallucinating, nothing odd was happening, I was just very unwell in a hospital. Or the second time, actually, I was very unwell out of a hospital. But both times I can say, I did not taste the pain that my body was feeling, because I was taken up by the Lord into the near-death experience, and only my body felt the pain, and I could see that my body felt pain, but I was at peace with the words of the Lord ringing in my ears. So, he foretold through Mohammed that every soul will taste death, and what I experienced there is impossible. I must be one of those evil lying Jews who's going to go to the ever fire, because that doesn't ever happen, even though it happened to me, a complete nobody random, twice. But anyway, according to Allah, that doesn't ever happen, and everybody tastes death, so you better just grin and bear it. Surely all your reward will reach you after this, after you taste death. So on the way to paradise, you'll taste death, you'll go through the suffering, you'll end up in the ever fire. That's what he's saying here, despite the fact that he previously said you wouldn't be tasting ever fire, O Muslims. This verse proves that you will be, unless of course Allah is wrong, but you don't think he's wrong, so what you think is this, and what this says is, surely every soul will taste death, surely all your reward will reach you after you taste death on the day of resurrection, once all the Jews, Christians, apostates, atheists and pagans are all off with their head dead in the ground. Then he goes on to finish, so whoever is removed from the ever fire and then enters the garden is indeed triumphant. So what he's saying there is everyone's going to go into the everfire, whether they're righteous sinners or whatever happens, they're all going to go to everfire, and it's Allah that's doing this, because it's his everfire. Then he's going to pick out the ones he likes, and they will enter his paradise garden, and they will indeed have triumphed and be triumphant. And what could be higher, quote, than pride in yourself? So Allah is telling you here, even though it's one of the deadly sins that Christ forewarned of, pride in your own accomplishments is the main thing in your life that's the highest of all values. And that is the way you're going to get to his paradise garden, by being extremely prideful of yourself and the accomplishments of your own life. Even though he said at the beginning of time when he created you in your mother's bowel, yes, not womb, he created you in the bowel, it says so in the Quran of the Muslims, he said he wrote your destiny from there, he wrote your path all the way through life, predetermined it, and you would end up with him. So actually, when you're feeling pride in your own life, you're actually feeling pride in Allah having written your life for you. Unless you're like me and you're a non-believer, in which case, woo, you just got mind controlled into what you're doing now. So I guess pride doesn't really matter, it's just what happens according to Allah. And that's the end of that verse. So we move on. 186. Your life and wealth, your hearts also will be tested. You will hear the pains of those who had books before you, and from the harmful evil ones and the polytheists. Allah determines this by your obedience and patient fear of him. End of verse. So if we break this down, what Allah is saying, everyone's going to that evil ever fire and burning in hell. The ones he chooses to pick out will be triumphant and go to his paradise gardens after having killed all the Jews and Christians. So this can't happen until everyone on earth is dead, is what he's saying, that day of resurrection. The ones who are most likely to go there are the ones who had books before this one. Now, who could that be? Who had a book before the Quran? I was going to say the Jews had the Torah, that was before the Quran, but actually Allah told us, no, they're just forgeries. There was no book before this, is what he earlier said. Remember? Should we ask him? Let's ask him. Allah! Allah, come here a minute. Allah, mate, I know you're sleeping. Can you wake up? Come over it. Allah, let me just ask you something about what you've written here. You've said here, your life and wealth, your hearts will also be tested. You will hear the pains of those who had books before you did, from the harmful evil ones and the polytheists. Now, didn't you say to me, when you were going through the Jesus son of Allah bit, you definitely said to me that the Quran was the first book, the oldest book, and the main book, from which all wisdom flows, quote, and then you said the other books came after and are a forgery of this book. So, again, I don't mean to pick hairs with you and make you feel small or sad. I'm trying to be nice about this, but how can there be people who read books before this one if this one was indeed the first and the source of all wisdom and the other ones are forgeries? How does that happen? You're also the master of time and the universe. You have a TARDIS, do you? Not a TARDIS, but well, it sounds... Anyway, I'll continue with the video. We'll take this up after I finish, yeah? Alright, off you go then. Not a conclusive or a good answer, in fact, from Allah there. So what he's saying is, the guys who are not going to be picked out of the evil fire to go to his paradise gardens, particularly are the ones who had evil books that were written before this one, the Quran of the Muslims, which he claimed was the first ever book and the source of all the other books. But I feel like he's forgotten. He's having a senior moment. Bit of senility creeping into Allah's mind there. He's forgotten that he said that. So what he's referring to here with the earlier books of the polytheists and the evil ones are the Jews with the Torah, which is the original first book, which he claimed actually he wrote later, but now we know he didn't. And the polytheists are the Christians who he believes have three icons of worship, and incorrectly, Muslims think Jesus, God, and Mary. Don't know how Mary... Probably the Catholics were the ones who were responsible for that, because they do have a lot of Mary worshipping, don't they? But regardless of that, we only worship Christ. But the point of this, if we break it down, is that your life, wealth, and your hearts will be tested if you heard anything out of any other previous books. and then you will not go to the paradise garden because Allah will determine that your obedience and your patient fear of him alone and his book was not right. And so then you'll go to the evil fire and you'll burn in his, his what did he call it? His eternal ever fire. That's the thing. But I have to make the point, he did just admit here, Quranic scholars, this is accurate to what Allah says in his book, dictated by Prophet Mohammed. There were, in fact, books before this one. So this one is the forgery of those, i.e. the Gospels and the Torah of the Jews. Those evil creatures. So that's the end of this verse, and we move on. 187. When Allah made his covenant to those given his book, you were to reveal it and never to hide or betray Allah. Yet some cast it away behind them. They trade it for only his evil fire. End verse. See, I knew it. Now have you noticed how Allah does this? He makes an error, but then because in the next verse he's already written the thing, and back in the days they didn't have computers where you can just use backspace. He's already penned out the scriptures. He knocked it out of a tablet or whatever he does. Now he said that, he can't be bothered to go back and write a whole new tablet. So he's going to do a correction in the next line. And that is why, if we break it down, he says, when Allah made his covenant to those given his book, you were to reveal and never to hide or betray Allah. I.e., even though he originally said his book was first and he wrote the other ones and gave it to the Jews and Christians, now he's saying actually his book was first and those other books are indeed forgeries. If you have any arguments about this, you refer to the most recent one, and anyone who doesn't is not honouring the covenant to people given to his book, who you were to reveal and never to hide or betray. So if you're having questions, doubts, arguments, discussions, or debates, and this comes up, you are not a good Muslim, because you are not to hide or betray Allah, what he's saying here. You are to reveal his Torah. And incidentally, O Muslims, when you're having a go at me for reading the Quran word by word, verse by verse, accurately as I'm doing, you're hiding the truth of his Quran. So in the words of Allah, you're a bad Muslim, you're going to go to the everfire. I'm not, because I'm doing the righteous work that he's instructed us all to do. Just think about that. But anyway, the point of this, yet some cast it away behind them, is you, O Muslims, are casting this behind you unless you like and follow all my videos and listen to every word, because it's accurate. Apart from Allah's bit that he wrote isn't accurate, where he says his book is the oldest one, and then in this verse says anyone who had earlier books and listened to those are wrong, evil ones, polytheists, i.e. Jews and Christians. So he's made a mistake there, but you have to honour his mistake, otherwise you're a bad Muslim. And you also have to listen to me and like my videos, because I'm spreading the truth of the Quran. Do you see what I mean about he screws you over, O Muslims? How can you be a good Muslim and do both things? How can you punish me for having a false book, which is a forgery of this, and also reveal the truth of this, which is that the earlier books were before this one and were not forgeries? You can't. He is tricking you into his evil fire. But we'll get to that. And that's the end of that verse. That's what that means. 188. Do not think, he loves saying that, doesn't he? Do not think that the rejoicers of falsity who love other gods and books will be loved or praised for this. They will not be rejoicing when in torment, burning forever in my evil fire. End of verse. So we can rush through this one quickly. What he's saying here is don't think that those guys who were in the other books are rejoicing of that falsity, even though he said he wrote them and gave them to them so they're true. Then he said, nah, they're all forgeries, this was first. Then he said, but Jesus, son of Allah, gave them and revised them so they're now true, even though they came after this. And now he's saying, no, that's all crap, they came before, but don't listen to them. This is the truth. Even though he said 4 conflicting things, don't think that these guys who argue those 4 things are true. They're still false. That's what he's saying here. He's saying us guys with logic and historical reasoning powers of intelligence who think this is nonsense because it says so in its own words, will go to hell because we are a falsity who love other gods, and we will not be loved or praised for this. They will not be rejoicing when in torment, burning in the evil fire forever. That's us. Despite the fact that this has got mistakes in it, and is therefore not perfectly preserved as the eternal divine word of Allah. Just saying. And we move on. 189. And so too Allah owns the kingdom of heaven and earth, even though just a minute ago in one of the previous 2 episodes he said he will inherit the earth and the heavens when the Muslims kill all the Jews and Christians. So there's more mistakes to come. Allah! Allah! Come back. Come on, over you come. I know you claim not to be a drinker, but you've made 3 mistakes in 3 consecutive verses here. Are you feeling alright, Allah? You've got a headache. I'll let you be. He's not feeling very well. I suppose we can say that's the excuse why he has 3 mistakes in 3 consecutive verses here, and also has cancelled out a large portion of his own previous writings, but we'll be nice to him. Show him some Christian forgiveness and mercy, because he's obviously not his usual self. He's a bit old, you know, he's going a bit senile. Don't worry about it, Allah. And we move on. And we move on to our final verse, 190. The signs for this, the truth of that which I speak, are the stars and the moon, the changing lights of the night and day, and the creation of their bodies and their movements through the sky, apparent to all those who are wise, O Muslims. End of verse, end of reading. Now, I really love how he ended up on that bit, because so many Muslims go, oh, the crescent moon and the stars, nothing to do with Islam, it's nothing to do with Allah, it's nothing to do with Mohammed, it's nothing to do with us, since you pointed out that it's Egyptian pagan demonology. But I fear this scuppers you a little bit. The signs for this are the stars and the moon, the changing lights of the night and day, and the creation of their bodies. And I quote. So if this is Allah's true divine testament dictated by the one and only Mohammed, who never makes a mistake, even though he made 3 in this page and tons of mistakes before, then how can you say the star and the crescent moon are nothing to do with Allah when he has just said here they are the signs that he's true? So if you don't believe they're his signs, you don't believe he's true. And you, my friend, O ye Muslims, will go to the ever fire and be burning along with me, regardless of your obedient worship, and the fact you gave him all your money. Just saying. And then he finishes off by saying, the creation of these bodies and their movements, i.e. the ellipses, the blood moon, the new moon, all the things he previously said are signs of Allah, are apparent to all those who are wise. So if you recognise his crescent moon and star, you are wise, O Muslim. But if you don't, you are dummy dum dum dum, like those dummy dum dum Jews, and you will burn in the evil fire. So it doesn't matter whether you believe it, blindly obey like you've been told, or you're not worshipping enough. And that's the end of this video. So, I feel like, once again, this is very clear and direct words of Allah, the divine one, the holy, all-knowing, all-seeing one. Then there's not a lot of summarization and explanation needed from me. What we see here is that Allah is very keen on convincing people that it's him that's the real God. He's the one who divines who goes to heaven and who goes to his ever fire. Nobody gets away with it. Everyone tastes death, even the righteous ones. He chooses who gets pulled out of the fire and put into his garden paradise. And the reason that we know this is true, because the sun, moon, stars and everything else that he created are magical signs of him, i.e. the crescent moon and the star. And if you don't believe him, you're not worshipping enough. Not only that, you are not wise. So you better believe everything he says and not have any questions or doubts. Otherwise, off with your head. You are dead. And that is the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that. I had a great laugh making this one. The next one's going to be even better. So I will bid you good day, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. And so we catch out many more of the illiterate paedophilic warlord's lies and tricks. But I actually believe him because, woo, he's mind controlling me and you too. So if you don't want to be mind controlled, I'll see you back here at 4:15. In the meantime, have a good day, God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.